Shalom and a warm welcome to our Israel Vision studios located here in the gardens of the lovely Mount Zion Hotel today. And we're overlooking the old city of Jerusalem. Our guests today are on People Who Make a Difference, are making a big difference around the world. They are Johan Christoff Arnold, a best-selling author, and peace advocate Steven McDonald, a New York policeman who was shot and paralyzed by a 15-year-old boy some years ago. They're here in Israel to address the issues of rising violence among Israeli youth. And thanks so much for being with us today. This issue of violence in Israel is becoming an epidemic, and the government and leaders here are really, they're wringing their hands. They don't know what to do.
People here are shocked at the violence.
Yes.
We don't expect violence in our streets, murder in our streets, but this is Israel and it's something new for us.
So thank you for coming, but what will you try to accomplish while you're here in your mission here?
Well, you never know. It's like planting seeds of hope. There's a Talmudic saying, if you save one child, you save the whole world. And that is our mission statement of Steve and I, of going around schools, talking to children, talking about violence, the futility of it, and that there is a much better way. And that is through forgiveness. And Steve tells a story, and it has a powerful effect.
So, well, Steve, what actually happened to you?
I've been a New York City police officer for 21 years, and 19 years ago I was investigating a series of violent crimes in Central Park in New York City. And I stopped to question 3 teenage boys and thought I had the right one with the gun, but his partner. His friend had the gun and he shot me. Shot me in the head, my throat, and my arm, left me on the ground for dead. My partner saved my life. And the medical teams continued that in the hospitals, and while I was in the hospital, God saved me again. And I found forgiveness, and I shared it with the young man who shot me.
Amazing. And how did he respond to that?
My son was born 6 months after I was shot, and a month later at his baptism, I couldn't talk because of the gunshot wounds to my wife. Patty Ann told everyone that I forgave the boy who shot me. We never expected anything to come from that with the young man. About a year later, he called my home from prison, and he apologized to my wife and to me.
And that's a healing. That is an enormous healing that you sent out to him. You sent out away unforgiveness and sent him forgiveness. And how is he today?
Sadly, he spent 9 years in prison, and 3 days after he was released in September of 1995, 3 days after his release, he died in a motorcycle accident. So I had offered him the opportunity to work together, to share this message with school-aged children. My wife told me when I came home that I couldn't sit at home. I had to get out and do something with my life, share my story. Then Christoff, we met 8 years ago, and he asked if he could include my story in his book. And now, today, we are working in schools something that the young man and I could not do. We're doing together and touching lives.
Now, Christoff has written this book entitled, Why Forgive? Here in Israel, forgiveness is a very big subject. It's something that we all grapple with because we are a nation that has been terrorized from its inception. And you know that. Would you describe to me what forgiveness does for the one who forgives? And also, how does forgiveness and forgetfulness go together?
A wonderful question. Forgiveness actually generated in this country by Jesus. And forgiveness is a power, a strength that frees. It's never a weakness. It's the strongest weapon that God gave to every human being to overcome evil. And bonds are broken, the chains of Satan are broken if we forgive. And I have seen the lives of wonderful people destroyed because they could not forgive.
Yes.
And forgiveness is letting go and becoming a human being again. And that's what Steve and I wish for people, to become human beings again and to be the person that God wants you to be. So it's a big topic that affects
Huge topic.
every human being.
And what does forgiveness do to the offender, to the terrorist, to the murderer? What does forgiveness do for them?
But I tell you, I have a story in my book of a father who lost a son to a drunk driver. And he said, the driver has to be punished, but I have to forgive, and this is a process that I have to go through. It doesn't affect the driver. For me as a father to become free, I have to forgive. It's a process that I have to go through. And that the offender, the victim or whatever, you leave up to God. The main thing is that you start with forgiveness in yourself. And then it has ripple effects. It affects thousands of people.
I have another question. We have a saying in Israel, we will forgive, but we will never forget. Would you address that?
It's especially in regard to the Holocaust.
You can never forget. If someone lost a beloved one, something very precious is out of your life, you can never forget. But may God give it that forgiveness is given. They don't contradict one another.
No.
When someone dies, that dead person can become living again through forgiveness by the father, mother telling about their dead child, and all of a sudden that human being has meaning and actually gives a mission to other people. I've experienced that in my life again and again. Death is always a witness to the living.
We have a friend who is working with Palestinian refugees down in Jericho, and she said that when a lady who came to the Lord, who was from a Muslim background and hated Israel and hated the Jews, when she came to the Lord and came out of the waters of baptism, she said that a huge weight came off of her chest. And I believe that has to do with unforgiveness and pain, and yet she became released by this. What about how do you think your breaking the cycle mission can somehow impact the Palestinian kids, those that are being incited by television to become murderers and killers of Jews? I mean, it's happening every day.
Steven.
I think terrorist acts of violence, whether they are adults or children, is as far from God as one person can be. God conceived us in love. We came here to this life in love. The older we grow, it seems like we separate ourselves from that love, and it's up to people like Christoff, myself, your viewers, all of us, to reignite that flame of love. And I think we do it in our assemblies when we bring this message of forgiveness founded in God's love. And it can be done every day with your loved ones your next door neighbors. So for those children, I can only hope that people here will find that love again. And a beautiful expression of love is forgiveness, and it's just played out in everyday life. You have to look for that opportunity.
Would you be willing to go down to Jericho and speak to some folk down there, some Palestinians?
We would love to. I've been in touch with many Palestinians, and what is not told often in the media, that there are people who want peace on both sides and are actively working on both sides. Stephen and I experienced it in Belfast, where there's this conflict between the Catholics and Protestants. And we have to realize that on both sides, people want peace and are working for peace.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we would love that to happen here because it is certainly, certainly necessary. Now, your book, Why Forgive, our viewers, how can they get this book, Christoff?
There is a website in there that would be best. They would reach it, and we would love to send it to them. It is being sold worldwide and appeared in 18 foreign languages.
If our viewers would like to have a copy of this book, then contact us at www.israelvision.com, and we will send this their names on to you,
Yes.
and you can service them that way.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we would be delighted to do that. You've also been involved with trying to break the cycle of violence in the United States, the violence there in the high schools. Tell us a little bit about that.
Stephen and I have in the last few years went to 118 assemblies in high schools and middle schools in the metropolitan area in upstate New York, and I've spoken to over 100,000 students on the issue of forgiveness and telling stories of people who suffered. People like to relate to stories, and they would say, aha, if it worked for this person, then it might also work for me. And that is our message, to bring stories of hope out, that people can realize it will work, it can work, and it makes a difference.
And at the end, we remind them that God made them for a purpose, that God has a plan for them that's unique to them, and you'd be surprised how much they want to talk about their faith in God, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
We are flooded by emails after every assembly from students and even from parents who said, my child is a different child after hearing both of you.
Praise God. This is
Our prayer today is that our viewers would be different after having heard our brothers speak. Giants of the faith, people who are willing to bend very low to come and pick up others who have fallen down. And we want to thank you for coming and for being with us and for sharing not only your thoughts, but your lives, not only with Israel, but with the Palestinian Authority as well. And may God bring forth orchards of fruit that will remain.
And so we would say to you, our viewing audience today, we wish you every blessing from Jerusalem. And if there's a situation in your life or in your community or in your family that needs forgiving, be the first. Be the first one to start the forgiveness. Yes. And then it will begin to roll and multiply. And we want peace to come to you. And so from the city of peace, we say to you the two words that mean perfect peace, and that is Shalom, Shalom,
from Jerusalem.
Shalom, I'm Dr. Jay Rawlings, and welcome to this week's Fact or Fantasy portion. Today I want to talk about what the word ceasefire or hudna in Arabic really means. When you hear on your evening newscast that a ceasefire agreement has been reached between the Palestinians and the Israelis, you really need to know what hudna means to a Palestinian in Arabic. A hudna is a temporary ceasefire that is supposed to allow negotiations between the two sides. Well, that's the fantasy. The fact is that the lull in fighting gives the terrorists more time to rearm and to reorganize. The Palestinian Authority National Security Advisor, Jabril Rajoub, says that all Palestinian groups have agreed to stop their attacks inside Israel. While on the other hand, Hamas leader Sami Abu Zabiri said at the same time, there will be no halt to terrorist attacks as long as Israel does not withdraw its forces from Palestinian areas and release all prisoners. Islamic Jihad, the other principal terror group, said that there would be no ceasefire until Israel stops her aggression. Now, according to this logic, Israel is the primary cause of the Middle East conflict. The world press then conveys the Palestinian spokesman's message of Hudna, or peaceful cooperation, while the militant Palestinians use this lull in the battle to bring more sophisticated weapons for use against Israel. In its historical context, Muhammad, in his battle against the Quraysh tribe that ruled Mecca in his time, originated the idea of the Hudna. When he could not rout them, then he signed a 10-year ceasefire or Hudna with them. This meant to Muhammad a temporary ceasefire. Then, after only 2 years, he was able to build up his army sufficiently to abrogate the Hudna and conquer Mecca, decimating the Quraysh people in the process. So the ancient precedent sets the pattern until this day in Muslim thinking. So look out for the word Hudna. It's not a permanent ceasefire, but simply a delaying tactic to gain strength in order to eventually defeat one's stronger enemy. Watch how fast Western leaders leap at the word ceasefire when discussing the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, bringing a Western mindset to the table, while the Palestinians use the word Hudna, a Muslim tactic that has been used over and over again throughout history with devastating success. That's the fact hiding within the ceasefire fantasy. See you next time on Factor Fantasy.
I'm Dr Rawlings. Welcome to the Still Small Voice. We're sitting today in a beautiful garden on the hills of Benjamin, just outside of the city of Jerusalem. How good it is to sit in a garden and be quiet. Quietness is a commodity that is hard come by in this crazy world that we live in. Ra'ash is the Hebrew word for noise, and allow me to read to you the definition. It means a tumult, a fuss, or an earthquake. It also describes outcry, clamor, shouting, an undesired sound not relevant to transmitted sound. Isn't that interesting? There is a noise in the earth, all over the earth. It can be dark and destructive in its negative energy. It is limited and contained to the earth and cannot reach up to the heavenly place. Evil is made up of opposites. It promulgates in noise, but must have a vehicle of the human mind in which to move silently and deceitfully. I'm giving you an anatomy for evil. It seeks a human mind that is dark and deceitful. Evil seeks to implode from within. It breaks the mind of the one it inhabits by suffocation and by explosion. Perhaps I'm describing the mental processes of a suicide bomber. Evil is a terror, but it is absolutely limited and its days are numbered. Evil cannot create. It can only destroy what God has created. Evil is not to be feared. I'm going to say that again. Evil is not to be feared. It is to be fought, denounced, and overcome by faith. God is to be feared or respected. There's the difference. Your faith can be filled
with the depths and sound of color that reverberate as you think or as you pray or as you seek to communicate with the living God from wherever you are in the earth to the highest heavens. But evil is silent, limited, and has been given a determined end. Now you take those words to your heart and be encouraged. How can I speak so surely? How can I say that evil will end? Who do I think I am anyway? Well, I go to a source much higher than myself, which is the written word of the living God. If you will turn to the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 32, read the entire chapter. It tells you where evil is coming. It tells you where it is going. And over again, you are going to read the words, and those who work terror in the earth will go down to hell with their weapons. I know that's food for thought. I'd love to meet you at my website, hisstillsmallvoice.com. Log on.